Welcome to SVG-TV News for Monday, August 30th, 2021. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. Frontline workers who fail to be vaccinated or get a PCR test as required in the Public Amendment Act 2021 could find themselves being locked out from their workplaces and considered absent for the day. This is part of the amendment to the Public Health Act, which was explained by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves on the radio on Sunday, who said that some people may be exempted from taking the vaccine based on medical or religious ground, but are still required to be PCR tested.
An employee who, without reasonable excuse, fails to comply with Rule 4 or 5, that is either the testing or the vaccination, must not enter the workplace and is to be treated as being absent from work. So if you turn up, nevertheless, you say you're going to turn up. But John, you'll turn up, but you wouldn't have anything to do. You could come and sit outside. You can do it. But you'd be, the regulations say you'd be treated as absent from work. But you can't turn up, and they can ask you to go, to remove you, if necessary in the circumstances.
The Prime Minister further explained that an employee who enters the workplace without being vaccinated or PCR tested contravenes the act as a misconduct, which has its own consequences.
Because the rule says if I enter the workplace, that employee commits an act of misconduct and is liable to be disciplined, not by the manager of the facility, Notice what? In accordance with A, the Public Service Commission regulation, or any other relevant written law in the case of a public officer. For instance, under the Public Service regulations, if you're absent for 10 days, you're taken as though you have abandoned your job. And the Public Service Commission may act in that regard.
A consultation will be held on the Public Health Amendment Act, and according to the Prime Minister, omissions or inclusions could be made subsequently, as he noted an inclusion of teachers as frontline workers may or may not happen.
There is a growing, and I believe there's a growing consensus on that may be included. At the moment, the frontline workers are defined as the healthcare workers, healthcare employees in the public sector, a member of the Royal St. Vincent Grenadines Police Force, the prison staff within the meaning of the Prisons Act, an employee appointed to perform duties at an airport or seaport, including customs officers and immigration officers, and it includes a person engaged to perform services, whether clinical or non-clinical, at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital or at a health service, as an independent contractor, including contractors or consultants, or visiting medical practitioners.
And President of the Public Service Union, Elroy Boucher, and President of the Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, have both disclosed the catalyst for the upcoming protest action. They say the industrial action is being taken against the recent amendments made to the Public Health Act. Speaking during a virtual interview on the weekend, both men said they are against mandatory vaccination, as it is a violation of a person's fundamental rights. PSU President Elroy Boucher highlighted recommendations made by the World Health Organization, the WHO, on government's handling of the implementation of mandatory vaccination if the steps becomes necessary. He noted that there has been a recommendation for a compensation scheme by individual governments to be established for injuries, etc., from vaccines, as they acknowledge that little is known yet on the long-term efficacy of the vaccines as well as its possible side effects. Boucher said the government of SVG has not been actively listening to the voice of the majority who are against mandatory vaccination, nor imploring the assistance of other social groups to drive vaccine uptake.
It was not necessary for the government to pass laws or to amend the Public Health Act to remove your constitutional rights in order to make the provision or make the path, clear the pathway for them to mandate vaccinations. We're not opposed to vaccinations. In fact, we have made calls several times. We continue to make calls for persons to be vaccinated. But there has been a fundamental problem with one, government messaging, and two, our government has totally ignored the social partners. So when government realize now that they are not making inroads, without even examining the reason why they're not making inroads, you proceed to assault the fundamental rights and freedom of Vincentians. And I've said we have looked at Barbados, we have looked at Dominica, we have looked at Grenada, St. Lucia. None of them have gone to Parliament to pass laws to remove your fundamental rights and freedoms. In St. Vincent, we have about 18 cases that are active. We have had 12 deaths, which is about 0.5% of the population. We have had 99.5% on its way with respect to recoveries of the total persons who have been infected. All of those statistics must be out front when you are addressing the proportionality of whether you need to go and mandate vaccination at this point.
President of the Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, argued that while the Constitution does give way for the health minister to make decisions relating to vaccination, revaccination, isolation, etc., when the island is faced with any formidable epidemic, pandemic, or transmittable disease, there is also Section 17, which deals with the declaration of a state of emergency under which such actions are justified. Robinson noted that no such declaration has been made in SVG.
It says that the Governor General may, by proclamation, which shall be published in the official gazette, declare that a state of emergency exists for the purposes of this chapter. It says that a proclamation under this section shall not be effective unless it contains a declaration that the Governor General is satisfied. It goes on to say a public emergency has arisen as a result of the imminence of a state of war between St. Vincent and a foreign state, that a public emergency has arisen as a result of occurrences of any volcanic eruption, earthquake, hurricane, flood, fire, outbreak of pestilence, or of infectious disease or other calamity.
Are you suggesting then that a state of emergency does not currently exist in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Well, based on what the Constitution is saying, we need to hear and find where is that declaration.
Various groups and unions are expected to come together for planned industrial action on September 17th to the 10th. Meanwhile, head of the Grenada Senate, Senator Chester Humphrey, speaking independently on the virtual program, pleaded with his fellow trade union heads here in SVG and across the region to push for programs to drive vaccination uptake. Humphrey noted the heavy death toll in the French-speaking Caribbean islands, highlighting Guadeloupe, where at present the healthcare system is said to be overloaded due to high COVID numbers. The local morgues, which are full, can no longer able to house bodies, resulting in 40-foot cooler containers being used to house the dead. Humphrey painted a bleak picture as he shared that infection rates and the death toll is now rising among the unvaccinated. Vaccination, he said, is the only way to curb the ongoing pandemic, noting that now is not the time for politics as lives hang in the balance.
My appeal is simply this. For those leaders, my comrades in the trade union movement, better inform yourselves. This struggle is not a struggle against the government or the employer. This struggle is to save lives because people are going to die a la Guadeloupe as is happening now. People are dying. People are losing jobs. The entire Liet workforce is home. not a cent in compensation. This is a real issue. It is not a time for a contest of power. It is not a time to prove that, okay, I am big and bad. Neither should the government do it, nor should other social organizations do it. But the government will be failing in its responsibility to the citizens if it does not take timely. We do not have the luxury of waiting. You cannot be judge, prosecutor, jury at the same time. The Constitution points out something that can be done. It's done. And you are saying it's unconstitutional? The only person that can determine the constitutionality or otherwise of a matter is the court.
The Grenadian senator lamented that any grievances with government mandates should be taken before the court.
Appealing to my comrades, please. I'm appealing to you. Your membership is depending on you. And from what I'm seeing, a lot of the focus of my trade union colleagues is misfocused. They are fighting the wrong issues. St. George's University introduced mandatory vaccines. They have a vaccination rate somewhere around 97 or 98%. There's not a single recorded case of anybody falling ill from having taken that vaccine. And there's not a single case of any worker who has been vaccinated has been transmitting that disease to others, right? Our sources from a contract tracing from those who have gotten the disease has not connected the disease to a vaccinated person.
Citing a recent case brought before the court in the United States by a union against the mandatory vaccination of medical staff, where the union lost and the mandatory vaccination was upheld, Humphrey stressed the importance of COVID-19 vaccination in certain environments, especially in a hospital setting.
And without being judgmental, to appeal to my comrades, please, please lead a campaign tomorrow. Go to the workplaces, urging your members to get vaccinated. It is the only certain available tool that you have. Washing of hands and so on is okay, but in a hospital setting with case numbers rising, that is not sufficient, my friend. My comrade, that is not sufficient. If you have low infection rates, you don't have community spread, or community spread is low and small and localized in the community. Yes, you can do that. But in a hospital, and let me say, a case brought by a union in a Methodist hospital in Texas in the United States, the union lost that case. And the court went along that mandatory vaccination is constitutional and proper, and I share that view.
In other news, lead scientist monitoring Lasso Freya volcano, Professor Richard Robertson, said this week an app will be launched here to assist with the monitoring of the volcano. Speaking on the Iron Lasso Freya volcano on the radio this morning, Professor Robertson said the app will allow people in the field to send updates on activity observed at the volcano.
One of the things that we're doing this week is launching something that's called the My Has app, which is a cell phone application that allows people in the field, if people see anything, like if there is a flooding event or if there is any kind of hazard, they could actually take a note of it. They could take pictures and they could send it into a point where NEMO and Seismic would get access to the information. So essentially, it's an application that we've been developing in collaboration with the British Geological Surveys and NEMO over the last couple of years. And this week, we are pushing for people to use it to help to essentially give us information from out in the field about what they're seeing in terms of hazards out there. We're not asking people to go and put themselves in harm's way, but if something is happening in your area, any kind of hazard is happening, we're asking you to just report it in to us through this app. You'll have to go on the app stores and download it. It's free. And you don't necessarily have to have internet connection at the time that you take the information. But you could collect the information and then send it later on once you have internet connection.
Professor Robertson said over the weekend nothing much has changed with the activity of the volcano.
Things have pretty much continued on the same path with a few earthquakes associated with the ongoing period of unrest. The steaming continues. We haven't had a lot of rain, so the steaming, if anything, is probably not as vigorous as it has been in some other occasions. So yes, activity continues in the same vein. with the hazards associated with the ongoing unrest period, being still the summit and the Lahas whenever they happen. But as I said, we've had some clear days. Yesterday and today is a clear day, so we're trying to get up to the mountain again. We actually went last week, as I was telling you about Friday. It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't as brilliant as we've seen it today. So hopefully we'll get some better views in just to validate the conditions at the summit.
And in the red zone today, lahars or mud flows were recorded in several river valleys as a result of heavy rainfall in the mountains. Reports are that a number of rivers burst their banks, left some persons stranded, including workers with the various utility companies who were in the area working to restore services to residents who have fully reoccupied the various communities after spending months in shelters displaced by the eruption of last volcano. In an emergency notice issued this afternoon, the Central Water and Sewage Authority, CWSA, advised customers that due to heavy river flows, pipeline damage has been sustained in the London Sandy Bay area. The company said as a result, the following villages will be out of water until intake is clear and the flow of rivers returns to normal. They are Overland, Magum, London, and Level. The CWSA said it regrets any inconvenience caused. On radio this morning, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves announced that St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be providing humanitarian aid to the Republic of Cuba to the tune of 1.4 million EC dollars. The Prime Minister noted that 15 20-foot containers with the supplies will be leaving for Cuba on Thursday.
Flour and rice from our flour mill and rice mill here as a gift to Cuba. Actually, we have purchased from ECGC, where the government owns 20%.
Yes.
We have purchased 20 container load, 20-foot container load of flour and rice. But because of the limitations of containers available, only 15 going now, and we'll send the other 5.
Okay.
And another opportunity now when we get, and I'm hoping that this would galvanize other persons.
Dr. Gonsalves said that the government will also be sending medical supplies to Cuba to assist with its fight against COVID-19.
Eastern Caribbean. We will, Vincent Grenadines would be and I take me to the OECS will be the focal point to gather syringes and needles and all the rest of it, and some basic supplies, medical supplies to send to Cuba because of the effect of the blockade and given how the COVID is going on. And well, we had boxed up 40-something boxes, I was told, of such supplies from our stock. And we are waiting on the plane because one Caribbean is what goes to Cuba, but one Caribbean had a plane which was down.
Noting SVG's own challenges, the Prime Minister said the great act of solidarity is not to give from the abundance that one possesses, but from the little you have.
Story of the widow's mite in the Bible. It is not, we cannot be so selfish not to show this solidarity. You know, for persons who want to make it transactional, because there are people who say, oh, you ain't got money and you can afford to do that. What happened to we? You know, that kind of selfish talk. I know I will get criticized.
For doing good?
But I have to have solidarity. And I tell you, this anchor of leadership will hold.
Beckway taxi operators continue to feel the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, compounded with the off-tourist season. Now heavily relying on domestic travel, the taxi operators say a bigger push or focus needs to be placed on domestic tourism. We hear more in this report.
There are close to 30 taxi operators on Beckway who operate daily from Port Elizabeth. Most say it is a struggle to get passengers daily. Some are lucky, but others aren't so lucky. Harold Davis is one of the unlucky ones who said it has been weeks since he got a passenger.
I haven't had a trip for maybe 3 weeks now. And I'm about, I call it 4 miles away.
David, who said he was in the trucking business for 34 years, gave it up about a year ago as he felt a taxi operation was a more feasible option. As a fully vaccinated taxi operator, Davis was hoping to be in the tourism-approved bubble, but it did not work out too well for him.
There is a certain clique or one guy in particular who is trying to, get everything, which in a couple of years past couldn't happen.
Donovan is another taxi operator who shows up daily at the taxi stand at Port Elizabeth, hoping for a good day. Donovan admitted that he is yet to take the vaccine, but is seriously contemplating it.
Sometimes what you make for the day, if you manage, you can buy back a gallon of gas, maybe a bird. You're lucky if you get a change to hold. That's it. It's mostly just that gas money we're really working for. I'm not vaccinated, and I'm thinking about it. It's not because of the taxi business, but I got different issues and I ain't afford to go to a doctor and have it checked that way, and I just ain't want to run into that thing. I'm not scared of it. I know I have to die. I'm 74 years old, but I'll prefer to die natural death if what I'm hearing is the truth.
A number of the other taxi operators on Beckway declined to speak on camera, as according to them, they do not have anything good to say, complaining, however, that they feel disadvantaged. One operator said business is good, but refused to comment further. Most of the taxi operators on Beckway use the open back pickup. It is comfortable for sightseeing. Ashley Oliver said since the taxi business, especially for tourists, has become difficult, his focus is on providing transportation service for the ordinary resident.
I have option. So sometimes a man might want some plywood, galvanized, but, I ain't gonna overload. Yeah. And then we check the boat when they come in. People want to go to certain village and we drop them, But for right now, even the COVID, in this month of the year, this is when the restaurant of them start to lay off people. So whether COVID or what, in this month, in Beckway, things just be quiet in like July, August,
Like some of the taxi operators on Beckway, Oliver is not vaccinated, and he explained why.
Your body, it's pure, which is true. I healthy, I pure.
There are a number of water taxi operators on Beckway, and business for them has also been slow. Given the fallout from the pandemic and other challenges, the taxi operators on Beckway are hoping that there is a bigger push for domestic tourism, which they say have been helping them to maintain their livelihood. For SVG-TV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
Caribbean Gold Standard, in collaboration with the SVG Medical Cannabis Authority, today officially launched their analytical service provider facility at Revelet. Speaking at the opening ceremony, CEO of Caribbean Gold Standard Labs, Matthias Piasecki, expressed his enthusiasm about the benefits of the lab to SVG and the wider Caribbean. He also thanked the government of SVG and the Medical Cannabis Authority for their support as they strive to make the lab the premier testing facility in the Caribbean.
I'm very happy to be here and very excited to see everything that's going to continue to grow and prosper within the industry itself, but across other industries that are going to benefit from our ability to test the products that are already being done and made here in St. Vincent. I believe that the local quality of everything here is actually undervalued in its nature, and where it's not maybe to where it needs to be, we will help to get it there in our continued partnerships. When we first were introduced and started this partnership, we intended to be testing medicinal cannabis, and that is the forefront of our lab. But more so, we realize the impact of our lab and the impact of our partnership with the MCA and the authority across the ministries for being able to provide more education, more purpose, resourcing of more opportunity for work here in the technical space, in the science space that we will be able to provide, and to continue to expand into other sects where we can also provide some opportunity. Caribbean Gold Standard was not a name that we picked half-heartedly. We do believe that with our endeavor and with the partnerships that we're developing here, that St. Vincent will be the gold standard in the Caribbean for testing medicinal cannabis and overall quality of products within the Caribbean.
Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, who was the key speaker at the ceremony, said the lab will be used to achieve international quality standards and will serve in testing products such as fish and arrowroot.
It will provide an analysis of products both in relation to the potency of cannabis and to show the absence of any toxic substances in the cannabis. This laboratory establishes a new era in the export of products from SVG, where we will be able to certify with the highest level of accuracy that all products meet and surpass international standards. In fact, the companies I talk about who are producing and who are going to export, they have their own standards, but they have to get it certified here in order to export it. Both from here and for the credibility and for the when they're imported overseas in Europe, Britain, North America, and the like. I've also been advised that other produce, including fish, number commodities, to be analyzed here.
The lab was constructed at a cost of $700,000 EC dollars and houses over $2 million US dollars worth of equipment. The Ministry of Agriculture recently hosted a mock bird watch to demonstrate the process behind tracking the population of the national bird, the Amazona gildingi. Several public sector entities were present at the exercise, which took place at the Cumberland Hermitage Forest and included representatives from the Ministry of Finance, the Planning Division, and the Central Water and Sewage Authority, the CWRC. In explaining the history behind the preservation of the forests of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Senior Forestry Supervisor Cornelius Richards highlighted the role of the national bird played in assisting those efforts. Richards noted that following the degrading of the forests in the early 1900s, several initiatives were taken over the years to rejuvenate these areas, including the proclamation of lands above 1,000 square foot being reserved for forests. He noted that a new campaign launched in 1986 to protect the national bird saw the preservation of the forests and some stabilization of the national bird and other species.
Now the national bird resides in this area. The St. Vincent parrot prior to 1979 was estimated at being around 3,000 birds thereabout, and then the eruption in 1979 followed by poaching or hunting for the purpose of food in some cases, not extensively, and for pet. As part of the pet trade, saw the population plunge to about 300 to 350. In 1986, we decided we could not allow this to go on anymore. We had to protect the national bird. So we pushed and had national legislation put in place, the Wildlife Protection Act, which focuses primarily on the protection of the St. Vincent parrot. And we started what we call the Road to Recovery campaign. Leave the forest alone, leave the forest alone. That became, the parrot became our flagship species to protect the habitat that you see in here today. Had it not been for the success of that program, we would have lost more forests. But residing within that forest, there's several other species, many of which are endemic.
Outlining the process that will be employed to conduct the census of the national bird was Bradford Latham, Forestry Supervisor with responsibility for law enforcement, compliance, and wildlife management. Latham noted that different points of the mountain range will be labeled cardinal points time and direction of flight recorded and the number of birds seen tallied. He said the different teams will map and correlate their sightings in order to give as accurate count as possible.
We saw 6 birds from 4 p.m. A bird fly from A, which is area A, to area D. You write that A to D, and you could write 4 birds. Within that same minute, you see another 2 birds, and they may fly from area F to I. And then, because you have a direction already on the paper, you'll know that, oh, this went towards south towards north, or if it went towards east towards west, because you have already the cardinal points on it. Now, we have points that other sectors are wrong. Here. Right. So there will be 4 watch points inside of this sector. So it'll be 2 persons here, 2 persons up at the next sector, 2 persons at another. So almost, and they'll be looking right around. All right. So in the end, you have a 360 coverage within this sector. And that you'll have to be doing that for 2 hours and recording different changes in weather.
Minister of Agriculture Sabota Caesar also highlighted the importance of the national bird and took the time to commend the hard work of the Forestry Department to ensure it is protected.
The Amazona gilding, the national bird of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is very dear to us. And recently we had 32 eruptions of La Soufrière, and we are all aware of the negative impact on the habitat of the national bird. October the 30th, 2010, we also had Hurricane Thomas that destroyed a significant percentage of the habitat of the national bird also. You do not see the staff of forestry a lot in the headlines because where you work sometimes is far away from the cameras. There are many generations to come who will enjoy more of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the biodiversity that we have to offer because of the hard work of the staff of the Forestry Division.
As St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues its work in conservation, Minister of Agriculture Sabota Caesar has highlighted one of the government's recent initiatives. In partnership with the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Environmental Fund, Minister Caesar said the government will embark on a project to remove animals on the various islets which should not be there, such as dogs, cats and manikou, to allow the bird population to continue to flourish.
In Cabinet, a very important decision was taken. On some of the islets of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, persons have moved in, taken their dogs, cats, other invasive species, manikou. Some persons are actually eating the bird eggs, lighting bushfires, and goats, sheep, rats, and because of that, we have decided yesterday at the Cabinet with immediate effect to have a joint project between the government and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Environment Fund. We're starting off with $100,000 and the information will come to the Forestry Division, where we are going to remove these animals from these islets so that the birds can thrive and that their habitat could be protected.
The Agriculture and Forestry Minister urged farmers and forest users to respect the laws of the land. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been recognized over the past 5 years for its work in conservation, with initiatives such as the ban on the hunting of turtles to the ban on hunting parrotfish and protecting the Union Island gecko.